Hey guys, Tyler Anzmann here with Tyler Anzmann Performance. So we're going to talk about the rocker or torque drill today and how it's one of the most versatile constraint drills that we have access to. So it can be used to help correct a variety of movement inefficiencies based on how we tweak the setup or the cueing to kind of help with these patterns. So the first movement inefficiency we'll use the rocker drill for is the lead leg block. So you're probably pretty familiar with this concept. Basically what happens is when that front foot strikes the ground, we're going to land slightly flexed, but then we're going to get to this stiff-legged position where that knee is going to extend and that hip is going to hinge. Okay? And what's going to happen is that's going to transfer the energy up the chain into the trunk, then we rotate, we throw, blah, blah, blah. So what's happening basically there is that we're hinging the hip and we're rotating around this hip, and as a result, that knee is kind of forced to firm up. So I don't think this is something that needs to be trained in isolation as many guys will do with the terminal knee extension, basically where you would attach the band to the back of the knee and then extend the knee. I would rather use this within the throwing motion and kind of put guys within the constraints or the guardrails of this drill and have them find their best movement solution for it. So the first way we're gonna train the lead leg block is we're gonna start in the rocker stance. We're gonna start in a relatively wide stance, about the length that you would be when you land. We're gonna keep that front foot on the ground. We're gonna think about throwing hard. Right? That's all we're really going to think about. We're going to think about finishing that rotation so that your shoulders switch places, right? So your chest will end up facing the wall that starts out behind your back when you begin the throw. When we rotate around that front leg, it's going to kind of force it to extend as a result of that rotation. So let's go through the demo. Okay, so we're going to have John demo this drill for us today. So what he's going to do is he's going to start out at basically your landing length right here. So let's get a little bit wider. All right, your front foot's going to be open to like 1 or 2 o'clock. All right, what we're going to do is you're going to rock forward, we're going to rock back, you're going to throw hard against the wall, and you're going to finish with your chest facing the net behind you. All right, so let's have him do one. And that's how we do the rocker with your foot on the ground. All right, so to continue on with the lead leg block theme, if that first solution does not work, that's the simplest solution, right? So we'll always go simplest solution first and kind of work from there. So the second solution would be to go uphill. So we'll go to the base of the mound and we'll basically throw backwards. Rather than going downhill, we're going to be going up the slope. What this will basically do is it'll force that lead leg to firm up sooner. Because one of the other issues that guys are having with their lead leg block is that they'll eventually get to a stiff front leg, but it'll be after the ball's released, right? So if we're transferring energy after the ball's released, it doesn't really do anything for improving ball velocity. So we want to make sure it happens earlier. And by going up the slope, that lead leg is making contact with the ground sooner, so it's going to have to firm up sooner as well. So we'll go there and we'll kind of take a look at this demo with John throwing uphill this time with the rocker. All right, so John's going to demo this next variation for us as well. So we're going to start out in the same position, about your landing length. Front foot will still be facing about 1 to 2 o'clock on the clock. All right, we're going to do the same thing. We'll rock forward, we'll rock back, and then you're just going to, again, finish facing the netting to his left. All right, so let's go ahead and see one. So the next issue we'll use the rocker to kind of work on correcting is the center of mass or pelvis shift. All right, so an issue a lot of guys will have is they'll kind of get to this false pelvis that Randy Solomon will call it, and that's basically when you're kind of tipping back and it looks like your hips are leading you, but really we're just getting a tipping back of the torso. So we're not gaining any effective ground towards the plate. All right, so ideally when we lift that leg, while we're lifting up, we're also gaining ground forward. All right, so we're shifting our center of mass away from the rubber so that we can gain a mechanical advantage and have a more powerful linear push towards the plate. So we're gaining momentum that will then ideally eventually be transferred up the chain. All right, so if we start well, we have a better shot of ending well. If we start poorly, things are probably going to go wrong later in the delivery as well. All right, so we want to get off to a good start, and the center of mass shift is one way to do that. So if you watch video of Tim Lincecum back in college, when he's lifting his leg, by the time his leg gets to peak leg lift, he's already been moving forward for about 6 frames of video. All right, so he's gained a lot of ground, And obviously he shifted his mass very well because he had to. He was a smaller pitcher. So if we can do that well with whatever kind of size or strength constraints you have, we're probably going to have a pretty good shot at improving velocity. So how do we use this drill to improve the center of mass or pelvis shift? Let's take a look. Okay, so this time John's going to demo another variation of the rocker, this time for the center of mass or pelvis shift. All right, so what he's going to do is this time his front foot, we're still going to rock into that front foot, but when he comes back, he's going to come up into this leg kick. But the whole time he's going to be maintaining this kind of positive back leg angle. So that is, his hips are going to be in front of his back foot the entire time. It's not going to be over his back foot, but in front of him. All right, so let's go ahead and see how it looks. The next issue we'll use the rocker drill to kind of work on is with the front foot or hip landing too open or too closed, right? There's kind of this optimal range that we want to land in with both the foot direction and also where the hip is in relation to the back hip, right? There's kind of this optimal range where hip rotation is efficient and happens relatively easily, and there's issues where if we get too close or too open, then hip rotation is no longer happening as easily or as powerfully as it otherwise could, and it's going to throw things off up the chain further. All right, so this is a relatively intuitive one. We're going to basically put athletes in a better starting position than what they find themselves in when they land. All right, and then we're going to kind of work on it from there. The other thing is, though, there's probably underlying mobility issues if this is a problem for the athlete. So this drill should be worked on in concert with the mobility drills and other kind of soft tissue work that we should be doing in our training programs as well. All right, so let's take a look at the demo. So there are a couple different scenarios here, and we're talking about suboptimal hip and foot positions of the front leg. All right, so we could be landing with his front foot too close, so you can kind of close that off. So more hip. There we go, like that, right? Ideally, we want to be at about 1 or 2 o'clock on the clock, just like we've been talking about in the previous versions of the rocker drill. If guys are too close, we can't easily rotate around that front hip, all right? Or if he's too open, so let's open up to like 11 o'clock on the clock, right? Then we don't have this firm front leg to rotate around. We're basically spinning off on that heel, okay? The other scenario is, let's say his front leg is too closed off, so bring your front leg this way. So it's across his body. So what's happening now is we have to spin off on that front foot in order to open up. And then we've got this linear deceleration pattern going where our arm just has to bang into our body because we can't finish torso rotation and decelerate the arm, all right? So then it's gonna be very difficult to get that firm front leg that we're looking for, all right? The other scenario is that hip's way too open. Yep, so same deal, then we don't really have the necessary leverage to rotate around that front leg. So there's this kind of optimal range, all right? So we'll go through one of the scenarios here. So go ahead and bring back to about the normal spot where you were. All right, so let's say his front leg is too closed. All we're gonna do is we're just gonna open him up so his heels are in line. We have a basketball court here, so it's relatively easy to see. He's gonna line up on one of the cracks in the floor, so his heels are basically in line, or even if that front foot is a little bit wider than that back heel. All right, and then he's going to go through one of the drills here and kind of get a feel for what it feels like to have a more open front hip. Go ahead. All right, so he could more easily rotate around that front hip because it was open enough that he could get over it rather than too close, where unless you have elite front hip internal rotation, you're not going to be able to get around that front hip, right? We can see Jake Arrieta landing a little bit more closed across his body, but obviously he has elite front hip internal rotation so he can get around it. Not everybody has that, so we need to make adjustments positionally to make sure that we can get to our best velocity. So the next issue we can use rockers or torques for is rhythm. Right? So rhythm is one of those kind of hard to quantify parts of any kind of powerful movement. Right? It goes hand in hand with sequencing. So the better rhythm we have, the better we'll be able to sequence our movements together, right? Obviously, when we're pitching, we need a very specific order of movements to happen at very specific times in order for the energy to be transferred efficiently and for our best velocity to kind of happen as an end result. So we have a couple of different variations we're going to use here to kind of help with rhythm. So let's take a look at the demos. Okay, so one of the first ways we'll tackle the rhythm issue is with a figure 8 rocker. So all you'll do is you're just going to trace the infinity symbol twice with your hands. On the second one, you'll throw right out of that movement. All right, so let's see how it looks. Okay, so the next way we'll attack this rhythm issue is with a partner toss during the rocker. So he's going to rock forward, and as he's rocking back, I'm going to toss it to him. This will kind of help you feel when you're in or out of rhythm. If you're in rhythm, this will go pretty smoothly and it'll feel pretty good. If you're out of rhythm, you'll notice it. And you'll also notice when you're out of rhythm because occasionally bad or errant tosses are going to happen, so it'll give you good immediate feedback for what poor rhythm feels like. All right, so let's go ahead and see one. There's a good example of poor rhythm. So let's do it.
Come here.
Yep, that was my bad.
No.
And there's an example of good rhythm. So one of the other issues that we want to kind of help athletes out with via the rocker torque drill is the transfer of their drill work into their pitching delivery. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to make it more specific. How do we do that? We take it to the mound. So again, we have a couple of different variations we'll use from the mound. So let's take a look at those demos. Okay, so since specificity should be driving all of our training, we need ways to kind of make the constraint drills more specific to the actual pitching delivery and the competitive movement, which is pitching from a mound. All right, so one of the ways that we'll do this is obviously we'll just take the drill to the mound. So the first one we'll do is if you're a guy who likes to keep your foot on the ground for the drill variation, we'll start with that. So let's go ahead and start where you can keep your front foot on the ground during one of these. All right, so go ahead and rock forward, rock back, and throw. Good. And then the next way we'll make this even more specific is with a leg kick, like we talked about earlier for kind of getting that pelvic drift. All right, so this will obviously be even a little bit more specific than the front foot on the ground because we'll have to go through almost the entire pitching delivery from the drift on. All right, so let's go ahead and see how that looks. Rock forward, rock back into that leg kick, keep that positive angle.